So here would be your two roots. Your vertex is going to be HK. Okay, and those are the letters, we're going to use those. Those are the letters that is going to be in the formula, the vertex formula that we will look at. And then your y-intercept is up here. Okay, and then C, that's in the formula. That is going to be the letter that's going to represent that. Okay, so writing the standard form. And the shorthand for that is S of x. That's what it'll look like. And this is the form. This is the last equation that you put into the calculator was in standard form. Okay. That C at the very end, that is going to tell us what our y-intercept is. Okay, and you would write it, it's y-intercept, so your x is 0. So if at the end of that equation, if it says plus 4, your y-intercept is 0, 4. If it's minus 8, your y-intercept is 0, negative 8. Alright, so you get... Do what? Yeah, 0 C. Yes, sir. So that is where you will find the y-intercept. Your vertex form. Also know the shorthand. If you just see V of x, it's asking you for the vertex form. So it is A times x plus or minus h squared plus or minus k. Alright. Joey, what piece of information do you think the vertex form is going to give us? It's pretty hard to know.
What do you mean?
Okay, please help us out. The vertex form most likely is going to give us the vertex. Okay. To get that out, it's going to be opposite whatever the h is, comma, k. K is going to be your y, the opposite of h is the x. If you remember, whenever we talked about transformations, where if it was inside, it's opposite the sign, this is the same thing, same idea. Okay. If it's x plus h, x plus 3, the x value is going to be negative 3. If it's x minus 2, it's going to be positive 2. Okay, and then the k value, whatever the k value is here, it's going to be that on the graph. Going to the factored form, or f of x. It's going to be x minus one of the roots. Put plus or minus in there. X plus or minus the other root. So obviously this is going to give us our roots. And it will be opposite the sign of what is in the equation. Oh, let me move that for you. There you go. So, and whenever we've done these, and back whenever we had to solve by factoring, and you got it in this factored form, and you had x minus 3, x plus 2, you set them each equal to 0. X minus 3 gave you positive 3, x plus 2 gave you negative 2. And so that is what you would graph, as 3, negative 2. 3, 0, negative 2, 0. Questions on identifying those? 3 forms, 3 different pieces of information. Alright, let's go down to this example. We're going to look at these 3 different forms, get the information from each one, and then we're going to go over and graph it by hand. So first we have, and it's got some weird story about nothing that's important. So standard form, right here, this is going to give us our y-intercept. Okay, so McKenna, Morrison, what would my y-intercept be given that equation?
-8.
Okay, what is this?
0.
0. So 0, -8. I will go graph that. Connor, the factored form. What is one of my roots?
-4.
What do I need to do with that sign? Flip the sign.
Positive.
+4. Molly, what's the other one?
-2, 0.
Okay. Come over here. Go ahead and graph those. Know that your intercepts are always going to be symmetric to one another. Okay, so really, if you have your two roots, you can find your axis of symmetry if you need to. Then the vertex form. Ethan, what would the vertex be?
It would be +1 and -9.
-9. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take that. Again, normally, or whenever I graph these, I will also put my axis of symmetry in there and graph any points that are symmetric to those. So this point would be symmetric to my y-intercept. And then I can very roughly graph my parabola. Okay, but I've got those 5 points on there that I can easily find to get that shape. Now, to find that information, let's make sure that we're clear on this, and maybe something you can look for to make it easier. Everything that I have highlighted up here in red, what do all those parts of those equations have in common? They're in parentheses, and so if they're in parentheses, what do we have to do to the information? Flip the sign. Okay, I had x -4, that gave me +4. I had x + 2, that gave me -2. I had x -1, that gave me +1. Alright, these two pieces of information that I used, they are both outside the parentheses, they are not inside a set of parentheses, so the sign stays the same. Alright, I had -8 and I had -9, like it was in the equation. So do not get that confused. The next part says, what do you notice about the three graphs? We're not going to actually do this, but if I was to put this into y1, y2, y3, it would look like there is one parabola on your calculator, because they're all three the same parabola, they just look different. The next two questions are going to ask us to verify algebraically whether or not one form is equal to another form. Okay, so we're going to take one form, factor it, simplify it, do something to it to try to get it to look like that other form it's asking about. This one's asking about standard and factored. Okay, now between those two, I can take something like I can take a standard form and factor it to get factored form. Hence, that's why it's called factored form. I could take factored form, do FOIL to get standard form. Alright, on this one, I'm going to take the standard and factor it to get factored form, and I'll do the opposite on the next problem. So I will take standard form, and I've got x squared minus 2x minus 8, and I'm going to factor it. Now this one's x squared does not have a coefficient in front of it, or the coefficient is 1. So this should be one of the ones that doesn't take very long. All I have to know are, what are the two factors of -8 that equal -2? -4 and 2. And so that factored is x minus 4x plus 2. Is that the factored form from up above? Yes. This is the same as this. So that is just verifying that those two equations are the same. Going over to B or to C. This is asking us to verify standard to vertex. Okay, so on this one it's going to be easier to go from vertex to check standard, or so go from vertex to standard. So we will take the vertex form. We're going to start off there. So with that, the x minus 1 squared, that means I have how many x minus 1s? 2. Okay? Do not distribute the squared into that and write it as x squared minus 1 squared. Okay? That means that I have x minus 1 times x minus 1. And then I still have my minus 9 at the end. How do I multiply two binomials? What is that method called? Do what? Yeah, I think you're on the right track. But what is the method called to multiply two binomials? FOIL. Or if you multiply it by doing the box, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to do FOIL. So I've got x squared minus 2x plus 1 minus 9. After I FOIL or do box method, that's what I end up with. And then I would do 1 minus 9 to get that. Is that the standard form from the original problem? Yes, that is the same as that. Questions on all of that? So we're going to do another problem like this. There's a couple things different about the next one. That'll see, and then that'll be it. On D, we wrote those next to each equation, so we want the vertex, the roots, the y-intercept. But real quick right here, let's do a little fun game of matching. Okay? So, on here, Noah, the standard form is going to give us what piece of information? The standard form? Try again. Maybe you'll get it right this time. There we go. Y-intercept. Okay. McKenna Wallace, the factored form gives us what piece of information? The roots. Okay. Ayla, you ready for this one?
Yeah.
The vertex form is going to give us what? Atta girl. Okay, so just make sure that you know what piece of information comes from which equation. That is going to make, come test time and quiz time, that is going to make those extremely easy. Just knowing those pieces of information. So, going to 2, first thing we'll do again is pulling out the information from that. So, Michael, what is one of my roots from the f of x?
-6.
Just -6?
Yeah.
There we go. Kendall, what's the other one?
2, 0.
Alright. -6, 0, 2, 0. So let's go ahead and graph those. Once you have those, Lily, what would my vertex be?
-2, -32.
Awesome. And Neil, what would my y-intercept be?
It would be negative 1, 2, 4.
How do I need to write it though?
0, comma.
So there's 0, negative 24. There roughly is my axis of symmetry, point symmetric to my y-intercept. And there's my ugly parabola. And I've got all the points where they need to be. Somebody tell me what value is the same in all three equations? Okay. Not necessarily the x, but just the 2. Okay. And I know on the homework there's going to be some problems where you're going to have to find that a value. Okay. But if you find the a value in one form, you have it in all three forms because they will always be the same. And if you remember from your transformation stuff, and it's not going to change, this is the number or the transformation that vertically compresses or stretches the graph. So once we are there, get that filled out. Let's just do these last two, and then we are done. So we're going to verify again, but that two causes a bunch of people to make mistakes. So let's make sure we're good on this. I'm going to verify that the standard is the factored. So on this one, I'm going to do it opposite the way that I did it a minute ago. I'm going to start off with the factored. This is normally the way that most people will choose to do this, going from factored to standard as opposed to standard to factored. But if you have an a value, I've seen a lot of mistakes with something like this in the past. What is the first thing I need to do? Distribute the a value. So whenever I distribute the a value, is that how I'm going to distribute the a value? No. What should I only take it to? The first set of parentheses. Okay, so you can do that and get 2x plus 12 and then do FOIL. And that's fine. Alright. What I will normally do, can I FOIL first? With what's there? With the x plus 6, x minus 2. Could I do that first? Yes. Okay, know that this is multiplication. So to give you an easier example, or on this, I'm just multiplying three things. An easier example, if I do 2 times 3 times 4, is that the same as doing 4 times 3 times 2? Am I going to get the same thing? Yes. Okay. Same idea here. The way we said first, I'm multiplying these two, getting what it equals, and then I'm going to multiply those two. Or, the way I normally do it, I multiply these two, see what I get, and then I distribute my 2 in there. I think that, a lot of times, that will avoid that error of distributing into both sets of parentheses. So I would just do the FOIL process first, and then distribute the 2 into that trinomial. And that's going to give me the standard that we had up top. Once you have that written down, I want you to take the vertex form and I want you to verify that that is the same as the standard. So on that previous problem, the mistake that I made, I would have negative 2x plus 6x, which means this should have originally been 4x. And then 4 times 2 would have given me 8. There are the steps in which that is the way that I would have done it.